Good evening, good people. We are so glad to have you here with us tonight. We're going to get started here in just a moment. So come on in, take your shoes off, get comfortable as folks are joining. Feel free to take this opportunity to invite your friends and comrades to come and join us here as well. Want to take a moment while you're getting comfortable to give some love to the team that spends every waking moment of every week since April making these calls happen. This is more than just checking boxes for us demographically or politically. This is about making sure that all of us have access to learn from and with one another and build the power of our people together. So I want to thank our interpretation team. I want to thank On Point. I want to thank all the tech and comms and design crew, every single partner organization, and every single one of you for getting folks on the call tonight. Good evening. Welcome to the Mass Call, where we process elections and our feelings, and where we're reminded of our work in this time and have an opportunity to learn together. We're in the final sprint to Election Day, and events are coming fast and furious. As you've been doing for many months now together, this Mass Call is our chance to take a step back as a movement and examine where we are. We want to look at the current events, but we also want to look past the punditry and put this election and this moment in a bigger context. So thank you for prioritizing the call tonight. Holler at your folks real quick. Tell them to join us. Today, we're going to be hearing from people on the front lines of our movement, people who I trust with my whole entire life, about the work that they're doing in this election cycle and what you can do to do your part. We're also going to help you understand what the work in the field looks like right now as a deposit that we are making to build the movement and the voting electorate that we need to make structural change in this country now and in the future. Because we may be running to get to November, but we're also on the long march for freedom. This is not just a rapid response intervention. We're in it for the long haul. I'm Ashley Woodard Henderson, your hostess with the Moses tonight. I'm so happy to see you all here. Welcome to the folks who haven't missed a call. If you've been coming to the Mass Calls over and over and over again, I want you to say what's up in the chat. We also know that there's some new folks here tonight. We're really, really glad that you've joined us. And if you're watching on the Zoom, I want you to use the chat to say hello and where you're calling in from. I also want to shout out the folks that are watching on social media and on YouTube. Y'all feel free to use the chat in the comment section as well. And I'm sending a special dose of love to folks who are watching the recording after the live tonight. One thing before we get any deeper into the call is what we do every call. A reminder that when we fight for justice and liberation, there's always going to be some haters. The more visible our work is, the more they come after us. It's certainly upsetting, but we won't be surprised if there are trolls with us tonight. So if you see any hateful messages in the Zoom chat or on YouTube or socials, please flood the chat with messages of solidarity and other loving, justice-filled, liberation-filled information and love notes to one another. Remember that we can disagree, but we're not going to be disrespectful to each other tonight. So if you see it, feel free to just drown it out and stay focused on what we're coming here together to do tonight. Beloveds, it is now October. I want to invite all of us on this call to step off the roller coaster just for a second. I want to invite you to get your head out of your social media feeds. I want to invite you to be present just for this moment. Take 1 second to sense what's happening around you. You are here in struggle and solidarity. We're together. When you look back on struggles of the past at the work of our ancestors and the fights that we've been through, it's easy to get caught up in seeing them through the lens of hindsight. But we are in the middle of it right now, and the outcome is uncertain. What is certain is that our collective effort will contribute to the outcome. We are not passive bystanders, and we are not feeling things that are somehow different from anyone who has gone before us or is around us right now. We're in this together. So we have to turn off the pundits in our brain, and we need to get to work. That said, we can't ignore the elephant in the room. People are nervous. It might be you, like me. This race is close. If you have been on our previous mass calls, we've never once said that it would be anything but a close race. We see a power struggle going on right now for the hearts and the minds of working class voters, which make up the majority of this country. And that power struggle is raging every day, all around us. It's being fought on the policy level in terms of what our politicians do or don't do for our communities. It's being fought on the level of culture in terms of the stories that we're being told and that we're telling about our experiences as different groups of people in this country. And it's being fought at the electoral level as we look at the different voter dynamics that are in play. Let's keep our bodies completely supported beneath us by this earth. Let's take a break, take a breath together, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and acknowledge all the feelings that we're holding at the same time that might be in contradiction with one another. Maybe you're arriving feeling exhausted or feeling dread. Maybe you are feeling a sense of not knowing the future. Maybe that makes you anxious. Maybe you feel optimistic and excited because of the growth of our movements. Let's say hi to those feelings. Let's not ignore them. Let's not be overcome by them. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Again, feeling your body supported by this incredible planet, wherever you are. Our long-term goal is to build the power of working class people across race, across region, to govern this country. Right now, we've been voting and saving democracy election after election, but we're not yet governing. Recognizing that it is not to say that we just need to give up or we need to just burn it all down. It's recognizing that we still have work to do. And fighting for the hearts and the minds of working class people is not just the right strategy, it is the only strategy. There is no path to governing in this country if we don't. There's no path to building durable majorities in the United States Senate if we don't. Even if the House, even if we did everything we could to get it back, we can't sustain our power there if we're only going to rely on affluent voters in cities and suburbs. There's no way to overcome the structural limitations of the Electoral College or take back state legislatures with just activists and people who turn up at our meetings. We need to go directly to the people. There's nothing new about this. Here is what we cannot do. Here is what we will not do now or after the election. We will not join in the parlor game being played by people with not nearly enough skin in the game of blaming one group or another of working class people for what is going on in this election. Right now, the pundits want us to believe that we need to be blaming Black men or Latino men. We need to be blaming Korean voters in Georgia, which Politico did a story on last week, or Arab and Muslim voters in Michigan. But we're not going to take that bait. And we also won't take the bait of blaming white working class voters either. Maybe it makes people feel good to do that, or they feel justified if someone else is being blamed. But we won't take that bait, because to take it only closes the door to what we really need to do, which is to organize across and through our differences and to build a deeper solidarity than the United States of America is used to letting us have. The late, great Miles Horton once said, "You can't be a revolutionary. You can't want to change society if you don't love people." Ella Baker put the same principle into practice by doing the hard work of setting up freedom schools in the South. Yes, we all know the examples of how and when the elite in this country have used race to break our solidarity. But we also know and have stories of a different America that is possible. For example, the United Mine Workers led some of the most important labor strikes in the 1930s, and they did this with an explicit commitment to organizing across racial lines. In 1931, Florence Reese, the wife of a Kentucky Union leader, after her home was attacked by coal mine company thugs, wrote these words to the tune of an old Baptist hymn. Do you know it? If you know it, I want you to put it in the chat. What is the incredible song written by the great Appalachian Florence Reese to the tune of an old Baptist hymn? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Y'all know it. We've picked our side. And our struggle will take us to November 5th. It'll take us to the days and weeks that will follow November 5th. It'll take us to the next decade of organizing that we need to do to build the power of working class people across race and region to structurally transform the economy and political system of this country that all of us call home. It's October, comrades. Let's get to it. So if you're down with what you've just heard, if you are feeling grounded in your purpose and commitment to building democracy, to blocking MAGA and building the party that we've always deserved, these things are exciting you, then there's work that you need to plug into. And for you to get information about how to do that, I need you, if you have not already, to text MASS CALL, MASS space CALL to 30403. That way we can get you the urgent ways you can take action tonight. We really need you to deploy to a swing state to knock on doors with Seed the Vote or support a phone bank that Surge is doing. You can text bank. You can build a wolf pack from home. You can sign up with the links that you're going to receive by texting MASS CALL to 30403. We're also going to make sure that we drop these links in the chat throughout the call tonight. So you're going to have multiple opportunities to sign up. And let me remind you what we're doing here. These mass calls are being hosted by the incredible Working Families Party and highlighting WFP member organizations and leaders from across the country. As always, we want these calls to be grounding, to provide you with information and strategic orientation from movement leaders that you can trust, and to give you concrete things that you can do to get off the noisy hamster wheel of information and misinformation being thrown at you and get you back to power building action. We've decided to add another call before the election so that we can dig deeper into how we plan to respond to the efforts being made by the right to subvert our free and fair election. Pause right now and RSVP for the next call on October 30th on 10:30, so it's on your calendar. Again, that call is going to be on 10:30. We need you to RSVP for it tonight. You can get the link when you text MASS CALL to 30403, and we'll make sure to continue to drop links in the chat. You can RSVP by clicking the Mobilize link that you'll see in the chat. We're going to have the MASS CALL on contested election scenarios. You can RSVP tonight. So the upcoming schedule of calls, just to remind you, is going to be following. October 30th, we're going to build resistance to the election subversion efforts of the right. And then on November 7th, we're going to have our regularly scheduled call to gather immediately after the election and prepare for whatever is next. Here's what we're going to be doing on tonight's call. First, as always, we're going to do a little bit of political education on our block and build strategy. Then we're going to have a panel of movement leaders who are on the front lines of talking to voters about what's at stake in this election. And as always, we're going to give you concrete ways you can plug into this work and take action, because we don't learn how to be strategic to just have a better analysis than the other guys. We learn how to be strategic to put it into practice and to build power. So let's get into this good learning. For this political education session, we're going to be digging deeper into Project 2025. Before we do that, though, we have folks who are new to these calls, so let's go back over some of the materials that we've covered on past calls to get you up to speed. And just a really quick side note, if you like what you've been hearing in these sessions, or if you want to get caught up on the things that you may have missed, we're posting the recordings on the WFP website at www.workingfamilies.org/mass calls, and we'll drop that link in the chat. Here's the cool thing. You can do more than just watch the recordings of the videos of the mass calls. There's also downloadable versions of all the slides and speakers notes for these political education sessions right there on the website. So again, you can find all the materials at www.workingfamilies.org/mass calls. We'll drop that link for you in the chat one more time. In our earlier calls, we've talked about the current political crisis in the United States. This crisis is defined by the interconnected phenomenon you see on this slide. Republicans have been taken over by authoritarian faction. Democrats are tending to the needs of affluent voters and losing working class people. And we've got a two-party system that largely attempts to tie our hands to prevent addressing these dynamics. With this understanding of the political terrain, WFP has an overarching strategy. In one sentence, it can be summed up like this: we are creating a new center of gravity on the political map to build and exercise governing power for, by, and of working class people of all races. Here's what that strategy might look like if we were to draw it in a simple picture. Most people think there are just two teams on the US political map, the red team and the blue team. But we're working to create a new circle on this map. Today, because we want to talk about Project 2025, we're going to zoom in on one of the circles on this map and look at the Republican Party. Political parties do not stand out there on their own, y'all. They are actually part of a dense network of organizations, of interest groups, think tanks, media organizations, all kinds of entities. And all of these contribute to the gravitational pull of the politics of any of the circles on the political map. Recently, one of the organizations in this network in and around the Republican Party has been making headlines. That organization is one that you all are all too familiar with, the organization called the Heritage Foundation, the authors of Project 2025. The Heritage Foundation has been around since the 70s, and they really rose to power during the Reagan administration. And every 4 years, Heritage puts out a document called the Mandate for Leadership. Does that sound familiar? It probably does, because it's the full name of the document that we've come to know as Project 2025. When Ronald Reagan was elected, he actually gave a copy of the 1981 version of the Mandate for Leadership to every single one of the members of his cabinet. Now, here's where it gets interesting. That 1981 document was published just as Reagan was first taking office. This year's document was published many, many, many months ago. And this is what's gotten Heritage into so much trouble. We found out about Project 2025, and I mean, frankly, they didn't really hide it. Thanks to the work of our movement, vast majorities of voters not only know about Project 2025, but they also disagree very strongly with its contents. There are people on the right who are mad at the Heritage Foundation about Project 2025. They're mad because Heritage committed the sin of saying the quiet part out loud. They gave up the game by putting this document out in advance of the election and then actually doing a PR blitz about it. If you've read the book by Nancy MacLean, Democracy in Chains, you know that the right wing in this country has spent decades quietly putting their loyalists into positions of influence inside of institutions. They found that their ideas were not popular, so they made a conscious decision to take their political project underground. The fact that Heritage publicly revealed what they're up to is against the bigger plan these guys have been following for a very long time. But that's not all that Heritage is up to. This is a bit of a preview of the stuff that we plan to go over in our next mass call on October 30th. But Heritage is also a part of an ecosystem of organizations on the right that are fully engaged in the business of election subversion. Recently, they released a report on something they are calling their 2024 Transition Integrity Project. If that name sounds at all familiar, it's because it's the same exact name of a project that they came and built together in 2020. And it sounded some of the first alarm bells about how Trump might try to stay in power even if he lost. Sadly, that original Transition Integrity Project was very much right in what they predicted would happen in 2020. Heritage's off-brand sequel of the Transition Integrity Project has a different agenda. They are fully part of a noise machine attempting to create conditions for Trump to yet again contest the election result in 2024. This is Mike Howell. He's the person behind the scenes leading this work. The thing to really know about this guy is that he's an attorney who, under Trump, worked at the Department of Homeland Security. He's a board member of the National Immigration Enforcement Center, where he claims a specialty in advancing the deportation sciences and technology. And currently, he's also the leader of a massive project, also run by Heritage, that has submitted over 50,000. I'm going to say it again. They have submitted over 50,000 Freedom of Information requests to various government agencies seeking to build a list of government employees who have used terms like climate change and diversity, equity, and inclusion in their internal communications. In the context of a potential second Trump administration, one that is promising mass deportations and the purge of career civil servants so that they could be replaced with Trump loyalists. Let's remember that these processes of government repression have a face and a name. And near the top of that heap is this guy, Mike. So the Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 make great headlines. They're truly scary. If you have been fearful because of what you've read about it, you're right to be scared. If Project 2025 were enacted at the national level, it would represent a destructive and permanent shift in the way our federal government works in favor of the wealthy and the elite. But if all we do is talk about Project 2025, if we become evangelists of this terrible project as a list of scary things, we're actually missing the bigger point. So now I want to tell you about some of the other think tanks that we're also dealing with. This particular one is in Washington, D.C. You maybe haven't heard of it yet. It's called the America First Policy Institute. Compared to the Heritage Foundation, they're kind of the new kids on the block. This is Kellyanne Conway, formerly Trump's campaign manager and senior advisor, and now an employee of AFPI. One of the goals of America First is to be better prepared for a second Trump presidency than the right was for the first. So who are some of the people at America First? Well, there's its president, Brooke Rollins. She used to be the director of Trump's Domestic Policy Council. And there is Linda McMahon, the former chief executive of the World Wrestling Entertainment Network and a major Trump donor. She's the chair of the think tank. We have Larry Kudlow, who used to be the chief economist at Bear Stearns and also a Fox News commentator, so you maybe recognize his face. He worked as an economic advisor in the Trump administration, and he is the vice chair. And after that is Chad Wolf. He's the CEO of America First. He was the acting head of Trump's Department of Homeland Security. Along the way, he was an architect of Trump's family separation policy, and he was the guy to send federal cops to cities in the wake of the murder of George Floyd. These are the top people in leadership positions at America First, but their website lists over 150 people on their staff, working on a range of issues from the economy to energy, education to healthcare and social issues to foreign policy and security. And if you want to know what a government in waiting for an incoming Trump administration would look like, all you got to do is look here. It's not just me saying that. Over the summer, Trump himself literally named Linda McMahon the chair of the AFPI to be his co-chair in the official transition planning team. So if you don't believe me, you can believe Trump himself. So what can we learn from all of this besides the fact that this situation is not funny? It's no laughing matter. What lessons can it teach us? For one, it can teach us something about how governing power actually works. This is a definition of governing power, which is actually not as simple as it seems. Governing power is about controlling the government. For a lot of folks, when we hear the term governing power, we think of it as a destination. You might hear it and think of it as a place that will arrive someday when we win enough elections. But if you live in a state like I do, where the forces of American authoritarianism are already firmly in control, this destination can feel very far away. It can lead folks to lose hope that things could ever change, which is exactly how the right wants us to feel. But governing power is actually a process. There's a constant churn of elections and governing. Did the people at the America First Policy Institute come out of the 2020 election saying, well, our guy's not in the White House, I guess we should just sit around and wait for the next election? Of course not. They kept building infrastructure to govern. They researched. They did interviews with former government officials in the Trump administration. They raised so much money, and they have been developing this blueprint for governing the next time they're sitting in the seat. And they're not even hiding the fact that they're already looking beyond Trump. They have a goal of advancing their agenda for decades to come. So let's get more specific. Let's think about what it means for our movement. Our movement needs to develop the capacity to create a demand for change. We need aligned policy experts able to design proposals. We need electeds who have mastered the skill of governing and legislating. We need the expertise to shape the administrative state and craft enforcement strategies. And we need the ability to defend our gains in the courts and in future elections. We also need to pass laws that can defend themselves. In other words, we need the ability to pass large structural changes to the system that ratchet in only one direction towards greater democracy. The right spends so much of their time creating one-way ratcheting laws in the other direction. They restrict our right to vote, or they constitutionally lock in the power of corporations to dictate the shape of our economy. At the Working Families Party, we've spent the last 4 years getting very clear on our power building model. As you can see, we place achieving the power to govern in all the ways I just described at the very center of our political project. Governing power is our North Star. But how do we measure our ability to govern? How do we know how much governing power we actually have? Well, at our WFP National Convention last year, we gave a presentation on the next 25 years of our party's growth. To prepare for that, we asked leaders in every WFP state to make some predictions about the governing power that they thought they might have in 5 years, in 15 years, and in 25 years. We asked them to give us their answers on the simple thermometer that you see on this slide. But let's take a look at an example of what I'm talking about. This is a hypothetical example of the kinds of answers that we got from people in WFP who are working in so-called blue states. A common goal for WFP is to do the organizing work to flip state legislatures. This does not get the headlines that presidential elections do, but in terms of being an indicator of our ability to govern, state legislatures are quite often where the rubber meets the road. So in this hypothetical state, the goal for 5 years out is to flip the state house. We've also gotten a majority on the state Supreme Court, helping us ensure fair electoral maps without gerrymandering. Now, remember this map? These are different gravitational fields on the big political map. Based on those 2028 indicators, we're going to try to locate where exactly the center of gravity is located. An analogy we can use to explain what we're doing here is to ask, where's the Overton window on this map? Which basically just means, where is the window of political possibility? In the 2028 scenario, let's say that the center of gravity is just tipped over from the red circle to the blue circle, but not by much. And the center of gravity is still at the top of the circles, very much being defined by the elite forces inside both the Democratic and Republican parties. Now, let's fast forward to 2038. As you can see, folks have continued to organize and build power, and now they have a WFP champion serving as the Speaker of the House. They've won a big congressional race, showing that the party is now able to operate at a much larger scale. Also, through their organizing in the state, the WFP is now part of a denser network of aligned organizations that are doing some of the work of designing and driving demands for new policies. What does this mean for our center of gravity on the political map? Well, you can see the center point has moved further in our direction. It's very clearly in the blue circle now, but it's also moving downward towards our purple circle. Hold on tight, because now we're going to fast forward 25 years. Here are the indicators. We won the governor's mansion, y'all. We've built a strong and organized caucus of WFP-aligned members in the state legislature, and we've begun to pass real legislation. And importantly, these laws are not easily overturned. They are able to defend themselves, like we were talking about earlier. And this is how the center of gravity is continuing to shift in this 2048 scenario. As you can see, it continues to move in our direction. The real power struggle in the state is now shifted from one between the Democrats and the Republicans to a power struggle between the Democrats and the WFP. That makes me excited. I don't know about y'all, but I like winning. I like building power. But some of y'all are like, well, Ashley, that's super simple. That's the blue states. You couldn't give me an example about the red states. Well, I'm glad you said that. Let me go ahead and show you. Let's take a version of the red states. In this hypothetical red state, we have to start at a different place. Here, we can see that by 2028, we've begun to build our pipeline of aligned candidates. The center of gravity is still clearly in the elite echelons of the Republican Party. So not much has visually changed at this point. But by 2038, maybe we're starting to see some of the fruits of our labor. We won a hard-earned victory in a major city. Some of our original class of people from our campaign school have continued to climb the rungs of power. And sure enough, the center of gravity is starting to shift. It's still in the red circle, but it's moving in our direction. Pay attention to that. I'm going to come back to it in a second. By 2048, our candidate pipeline has grown, and there's a new narrative shaping the political scene. It's giving our folks hope that we can actually win stuff. People are seeing WFP as a real player. And here's where the center of gravity might be in 2048. I told you I'd come back to it. I want you to notice something here. Did you notice how the center of gravity didn't actually travel through the blue circle over those 25 years? Did you see it? There are certainly states where moving through our organizing and our power building, we might move that center of gravity from the Republican red circle to the Democratic blue circle. That's not impossible. But we also get to think that it is possible to imagine our states being where the Democratic Party, either because it's weak organizationally, because its brand is too damaged in the minds of voters, or some semblance of both, the Democratic Party is actually not a player at all. We can imagine states where 25 years from now, the center of power could actually be one between the Republican Party and the WFP, where we've built power enough to be relevant in that way. So if you had the good fortune to be hyped up by seeing the map at the WFP National Convention last year, you've already seen this. But for folks who haven't been, who weren't there and didn't get to see this, I'm going to show you. So after we asked the leaders in all the WFP states to think about where they would be on the path to governing power in the next 25 years, we put it all together into one animated map. And as you can see, the map starts off with the places where we're organizing right now. And as time advances, we can see new states coming online. We can see the evolution of each of the states. Some go from red to blue, some become new swing states. Some states go from blue to becoming swing states with the WFP. Some go from being red to being a swing state with the WFP. And we also think it's possible to imagine states where WFP has become the dominant political force over the next 25 years. That's where you shout. You missed your amen moment. So let me say it one more time. We imagine that it could be possible that WFP becomes the dominant political force over the next 25 years. I feel excited about that. So we're going to end this political education session with this picture of the governing power that we can and will build in the next 25 years. Of course, you might be thinking none of this is guaranteed, Ashley, but we're guaranteed to fail if we don't try, y'all. And I know that the combined organizing savvy represented by the incredibly brilliant people on this call is enough to, at the very least, get us started in a real way down the road to the vision of what could be. I'm excited to be doing that with you. I hope this inspired you to take some action, because we need you today. If you haven't already texted mass call to 30403, this is your opportunity to do it. We need you to both sign up to be on the mass call that's going to happen on October 30th. We need you to lead a wolf pack. We need you to join a canvas. We need you to phone bank and text bank. This is our opportunity to hang out with the Seed the Vote fam and really throw down to make sure our people turn out. We have canvassing toolkits. What you need, we want to get it to you, because we want to make sure that we left it all on the playing field, so that if we win hard, all the way win, and we win together. So please take a moment to just take these calls to action. All right, y'all. I promised you that we were going to get some time with some of the smartest people that I know. And I know I say that every call, but I know a lot of smart people. And these folks are not only my friends, my comrades, my colleagues, but they are people who I trust with my whole life. And you're going to hear from them about some of the things that they're seeing on the ground, both in relationship to Project 2025, what the GOP is doing. But you're also going to hear about the life-saving work that they get to do every day. So first, I'm going to bring up to the stage my comrade, Sindolo Diamia. He's from the Carolina Federation. Y'all give it up one time for North Carolina. North Carolina in the building. I know where two or three are gathered. There's a North Carolinian on this call, so y'all give it up for Sindolo one time. I'm going to bring up my brother, my big brother, my fam, John R. Taylor III, co-founder and co-chair of the Black Male Initiative in Georgia. I know there's some Georgia fam on the call today. And then I'm also going to bring up Jennifer Knox, who is not a stranger to you all. She helps plan these mass calls and is the National Director of Organizing and Tech Innovation with the Working Families Party, but is on the call tonight to talk about her home place, Wisconsin. So y'all give it up to this incredible panel. We got Jay, Knox, John, and Sindolo on the call. Y'all give it up one time. Drop some reactions, drop some comments, drop some love to them. Send them the energy that they're about to give back to you. All right, Sindolo, let's start with you. I mean, first of all, you have been throwing down like a longtime friend and co-conspirator with me and with the party. And everybody right now has North Carolina in their mouth. Everybody's looking at y'all. And you've been up against some strong plays by the right wing to take governing power in North Carolina. It feels like right as people are starting to pay attention to your great state, this hurricane hits, and that just increases the amount of attention that you are getting. As a East Tennessean, I'm sending a lot of love to our comrades that are impacted by the storm all across Central Appalachia, but especially to our folks in Western North Carolina. And so just a lot of people are talking about the political realities there, whether they're living there or not. And so I want you to talk about how that's affecting your work. Is it a setback? Is it an opportunity to advance quickly? We're hearing the right echo chamber trying to take advantage of this crisis to spread their worldview and to break apart any potential working class solidarity. So what does the situation on the ground actually look like? And is there a path to governing power for working people in North Carolina?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. And I'm excited to be jumping in after that great presentation about over the long term, what does it look like to really win for our people? And yes, there's a path to governing power for our people in North Carolina. And the reason the right is spreading disinformation about the hurricane is because they see it and they know they're in trouble. In our state, we've been building people power consistently, deliberately, intentionally. This year, our coalition, all of our comrades in the state together are knocking 4 million doors. It's the largest voter contact program that has happened in our state since 2012 with the Obama campaign, and it's all homegrown. It is all organizations on the ground in the state talking to millions of people about why we need to come together, what that's going to look like when we take power, and how we can take back our state. So that's what's happening right now. And the right wants to change the conversation, not to a conversation about how do we help our people in Western North Carolina. That's not what they're interested in. They're interested in distracting from the fact that they put forward a candidate, Mark Robinson, their gubernatorial candidate, who has been exposed again and again of not just being against the values of our movements, but even against the values of his own people. And that in 2020, he said, oh, nobody should ever get an abortion. In 2022, he had to admit him and his wife got an abortion. Just recently, he was out here talking about our trans sisters and disrespecting them. And then there was a whole expose about his objectification and sexualization of them. His whole staff has resigned. And so there's a collapse happening inside of the right wing in the state of North Carolina. And they desperately want to change the conversation from their complete corruption and their complete collapse and inability to answer the questions of working people to trying to stir up cynicism about government and anti-immigrant ideas, banking on the suffering of people in Western North Carolina. But what we know is that everyday people across race and deeply within the working class, when disaster strikes, they help each other. Actually, that's what's going on the ground. And there are organizations like our partners down home, North Carolina, who've been organizing in Western North Carolina long before the hurricane and will continue afterwards. So the real conversation, the real thing that's happening in North Carolina is that people power is being built consistently over time, and the right is shook. They are worried. And this election isn't guaranteed for us, but is the closest one that North Carolina will see. And we're planning to win.
Ain't nothing to it but to do it. I can't wait to see you do it. I can't wait to see you do it. And shout out to folks who have been hitting the ground, stumping the pavement, both doing relief work and mutual aid work, but also going and talking to people about what time it is on the clock of North Carolina, getting people out to the polls. I love y'all. Shout out to the Carolina Federation. If you haven't dropped a dime to them yet, you should do that tonight. And next, I get to bring up one of my favorite comrades, John Taylor. Who is the executive director of the Black Male Initiative, Georgia, and is helping to build Georgia WFP and WFP across the South. When some folks hear Georgia, they automatically have an impression of things that they've heard from the pundits about y'all being the reason that we're concerned about the electoral cycle this season. Some of that is a myth. Some of that is probably true. Give us some examples of the ways that y'all have been living under a GOP governing power and the ways that y'all are building power in spite of it, John.
Absolutely. Can folks hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Yep. All right, awesome. So look, the reality is Georgia is a hot mess. We do have a governor who continues to refuse Medicare and Medicaid expansion. We do have a network of Republicans who continue to argue for things like abortion bans, who herald and defend and support this idea that repeal of Roe v. Wade was a great thing. We do have hospitals shutting down all across the rural areas in the Black Belt south of Georgia. We do have a burgeoning group of supremacists and insurrectionists and terrifying humans who are so afraid of Black folks, they just don't know what they're going to do. But that's okay, because we have a coalition of brothers and sisters and folks who are diligently working. Since we started this campaign, Black Male Initiative Fund has knocked somewhere north of 675,000 doors this cycle. We have had about 650 canvassers on the ground, all of them people of color, BIPOC, or immigrant folks, many of them under the age of 35, all of them extremely focused on how we turn out this vote. And we're clear about the fact that we don't have some false precept that we're choosing our champion. We know we're choosing our opposition. We know we choose the landscape that we're going to fight around. We also know how to fight, and we're clear about who's going to help us get what we need for our communities. So when you talk about myth versus reality, it is true that the inception of Senate Bill 202, which was signed into law by one white man surrounded by 5 other scared white men in the office with a sister outside, queer sister outside knocking on the door, who they arrested, Park Cannon, for asking what they were doing, happened. We know that they are making it more difficult for us to get our folks to the polls. We are clear about the fact that they are terrified. They are purging millions of us from the rolls. But the truth of the matter is, no matter what they do, it just simply is not enough. As my grandmother would say, we all we got, but damn it, we all we need. So we have been working together in partnership, in coalition at AV with Working Families Party, building the Justice League of organizations that are growing a drumbeat on the ground to ensure that not only will we turn folks out to vote, because we're clear that voting just gets you into the amusement park. It doesn't get you on any rides. The voting won't get you the funnel cake. We know that participation after the fact is part and parcel to how we build power. So what we've been doing is stuff like our Stop Cop City Fight Back, where there were over 116,000 petition signatures signed by residents in the city of Atlanta who said we don't need militarized policing, because we're also learning that it's not good enough to put folks that look like us in office if they don't carry our political acumen. We've been on the ground, and to be clear, that fight wouldn't happen without WFP and their leadership on the ground. We've been working to build a coalition of labor and community, of academicians and political activists who are all standing together so that we can build power. And what that power looks like is the ability to hold folks accountable when we put them in office and snatch them back when they fail to deliver on the promises that they gave us, which cost our vote. So, it's clear. Is Georgia a mixed bag? Every day. Is it full of some of the best activist movement folks and real organizers I've ever had the pleasure to work with in over 30 years? Absolutely. Is Georgia going to save democracy? Not alone, but you can give us credit and we'll take the t-shirt. But at the end of the day, just like Black men, if you see 6 folks in a foot race, you never look at the second fastest and say, boo. You feed them, you support them, you train them, you invest in them. And when you do that, the second fastest runner might become the first. See, there's a problem when resource comes into our community late and last minute, and they fail to give us what we need to build sustainable grassroots, real deep relational capacity on the ground. So we, in spite of all the obstacles, keep showing up and showing out. And I hope that after this election, everybody takes note and finally realizes Georgia didn't turn blue, we've been blue. But we can't stay blue unless we build blue. We will not have a progressive community unless we move to something more powerful. And that's exactly why we need to grow WFP.
Y'all better give that man some love. Y'all was talking about all sorts of stuff in the chat, and that Black man told y'all they hit 675,000 doors.
On track to hit 1 million.
Listen, don't play with them. While these pundits got y'all thinking Black men ain't out here doing what they supposed to do, they were in fact the second largest supporters of the Biden-Harris administration. Y'all better give it up for the Black Male Initiative. Shout out to Black Men Build. Shout out to all the people building the Working Families Party in the South. Shout out to Brittany Whaley. Y'all doing the damn thing. And I'm so proud. Thank you for not regarding it robbery to be with us, John. We love you. Next, I get to bring up, last but certainly not least, I'm going to invite Jay Knox, WFP's National Director of Organizing. And if, again, I said this earlier, but if you don't know this, she's one of the folks that's working behind the scenes every month to put these calls on. So y'all give it up one time for Jay Knox for making this happen. I've seen her all over the country this year. I'm not kidding. I feel like she's in a different place every week. But Jay Knox, you're headed to your home state. You're going to Wisconsin for GOTV. Tell us why you're going. Wisconsin is in some ways a success story because they fought back against right-wing governing power that once held it. What's that story? And tell us a little bit about what you vision moving forward.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's dope to be on the big screen with you all and not just working the back scenes. And I'm excited to be going home to Wisconsin. And I'm also excited to just be on here with some good news to report because, John, we've been the hot mess before, right? We've been that. And I just want to say for those of us who are in the struggle and really up against the right's attempt to capture state power, we can fight back. So if you don't know, Wisconsin had a Republican trifecta for almost a decade, 2011 to 2019. And not only was the governorship and the state legislature controlled by the Republicans, so was the Supreme Court. And we lived through all the things that they can rain down. And it very much was the piloting of so much that I see now presented in Project 2025 that they just like to expand across the country. And, I won't name all the things because we would be here all night, but when I think back on the thing that most impacted my life, it was the attacks on government workers. They were able to take over to the point where they could actually break a lot of public sector unions' ability to collective bargain. The Supreme Court right now, we've got some optimism on that front, but they, Wisconsin was a union state, and they really undermined unions' power. And then they didn't stop there. As they cut budgets, if you were a government worker, they started to subject you to furloughs. So imagine being a government worker and literally you could be told the next day, don't come into work and you're not going to be paid. This is social workers, right? All the kinds of people that serve our community. And it both impacted the worker and their sort of income stability, as well as the people who actually needed stuff to function, right? Needed schools, needed administration to function. And that was intentional. After a while, if your work is so unstable that you can't get paid, my parents were government workers. There were times where I was like, Dad, when you're going back to work? And he was just like, I don't know, actually, when they get through what they're doing in the Capitol. And, I think that was intentional. Part of that was we want people to quit these jobs so that we can replace them with people who are more loyal to us. And so when I see the Project 2025 goals that are anti-union and also that are stocking up, taking these applications for people who will ultimately be loyal to them, it's a repeat, but on a much different scale. And I am committed to blocking that because I've lived through the income stability that it can create for working families, bus drivers, all sorts of people, working people who expect and live their lives, right, needing just some stability and regularity, and for that to disappear overnight. Thankfully, this is not a sob story that we fought back, right? And I want us in this room to take very seriously that we have the opportunity to block Trump right now. And I know we're going to talk about it. There's a lot of, it's complicated. There's a lot going on in the country, but actually blocking Trump is of critical importance to working people and defending them, because the Project 2025 enacted can unleash a lot of instability. So we fought back. We were able to first flip the governorship and then able to flip the courts last year. And these were flipping them to sort of mainstream Democratic majorities. And a lot of times as a progressive, that's not the most inspiring race that I'm a part of, but it was important because this year, finally, we got new maps down. So the gerrymandering that they had done, literally our state right now is one seat away from a Republican supermajority that could override the Democratic governor's veto. Now, these new maps actually allow the potential for a 50-50 split. And so that's what we're trying to pull back from. Is right now we're on that one seat brink. We're trying to make as much headway as possible this year. And so, when See the Vote is out canvassing, we're talking about the top of the ticket in these electoral college votes because they're critical, but we're also talking about what's happening at the state legislature and how do we get to a blue majority. And I know a blue majority in many ways can be can have a lot of corporate power behind it. But in that blue majority, we know that it also empowers the WFP champions that we've been electing in primaries all across the state. And so over time, we want to build a strong working families caucus, an orange caucus. And to be, if we're part of a majority, then we can actually enact policies. And, our vision goes beyond that. It's our hope that not only can we get a real caucus in the state legislature, but Wisconsin is one of the states that we do think that maybe we could pass something like fusion voting. We talked about this on one of the earlier calls where we want there to be Democratic Party on the ballot, Republican Party on the ballot, WFP on the ballot, and the ability to, at the top of the ticket, we may need to endorse the Democrat, but down below, run our own folks. And I really believe that if I could imagine a 2028 or a 2032 where the entire country had to say, oh, hey, actually to win, the Democrat needs some votes from the Working Families Party, from a third party. What does that mean? I would love for the whole world to see that played out on television and to be able to ask, oh, actually, maybe I want to change. Maybe the two-party system, I realize, is not something that always has to be. And I want to demand change in my state. So we're fighting hard. You can support us. See the Vote is deploying canvassers out to Wisconsin. If you're in, I saw somebody in the chat that was in Chicago. If you're in the area, or even if you're further, come through and help us both win at the top of the ballot, but down ballot.
Yo, y'all give it up one time for Jay Knox, the organizing team at WFP. I see you got mad Wisconsinites up in the chat going in. We see you, and we love y'all. Thank you so much for helping us believe that impossible things can be possible, Wisconsin. We see you. All right, y'all. We're coming close to the close. I know it's getting close to 9 o'clock, but you know, I can't let y'all out of here without hearing from our party leader, the great, the incredible, the principled, the disciplined, the rigorous Maurice Mitchell is going to give us a little bit of fire in our bellies to get these calls to action done in this last, like 3 Tuesdays left season of the election. So Mo, I'm going to toss it to you.
Thank you so much, Ashley, and thank you for all of your work and all of your support to all of our people and for holding us in these conversations that we've been having on these mass calls. We see you, we appreciate you, we love you. Knox, Sindolo, John, thank you so much. I'm at a loss because for each one of you, I know all the work that y'all have been doing, you continue to do, and the product of that work, I believe, ultimately would lead to the victories, not just an electoral victory, but the true working people's victories that we all deserve. So thank you, y'all. Thank you for showing up for our people. And thank you in the audience for hanging with us tonight, because with 19 days left, every moment counts. Calls like this are the heartbeat of this movement. But these calls are not just a vibe or a moment to hear inspiring words, although Ash's words and Sindolo's and Jay Knox's words and John's words are inspiring, and they fill me up. Calls like this are also about action. And I want to start by highlighting the impressive ways you have already shown up. We need to list our accomplishments. What you all have accomplished so far has been impressive. Let's talk about the numbers. Let's break it down. Because people lie, but numbers do not. So together, just us joining these mass calls have contributed to a huge effort of talking to friends and family and neighbors and voters in crucial swing districts for the presidential election and battlegrounds where the control of Congress is at stake. You've attended a whopping total of 4,989 actions. That's almost 5,000 actions. And you've joined more than 2,000 new volunteers into the ranks of activists in this movement. Let's talk about our wolf packs. You've banded together in wolf packs across the country, in Florida, Oregon, North Kakalaka, in California, in Texas, in Louisiana, in Virginia, and in Pennsylvania that have gathered in person and virtually and organized to send more than 3,000 selfie postcards to voters, sent more than 286,000 texts, knocked on hundreds of doors, and made thousands of phone calls. These amazing wolf packs have organized more than 124 new volunteers into the work of reaching voters. As I say, the power of our relationships can't be beat, and you are proving it. Your work is proving it. We are proving it. Let's go to the doors. You've been hitting them doors. Collectively, folks on this call have knocked on more than 1,300 doors in critical swing states. Nothing beats a face-to-face conversation with a voter where we can hear and understand issues they might be grappling with, communicate what's at stake this November for our local communities, help make a voting plan, and make a lasting impression that mobilizes our people to the polls. Overall, Seed the Vote is on track to knock 500,000 doors, possibly talking to enough voters to swing this entire election. But we need more to make sure we can reach that goal and do everything we can to make sure we win. Many of you signed up and learned more about sending selfie photo postcards to voters you know. And while we are still tallying the final numbers, in total, together, this group has sent more than 5,185 postcards to mobilize voters in our own networks and neighborhoods. That is impressive. And you've really leaned in on phones and text, with WFP, Surge, and many other groups reaching thousands more voters. We've had over 2,600 meaningful conversations with voters, but we need to reach thousands more. The power of a real conversation can't be overstated. Sign up for additional phone banks and commit to making at least double the calls you made last week. Let's ratchet it up. We need to leave everything on the battlefield. This is how we close the deal and ensure people get to the polls. So stay off the up and down roller coaster, right? Where we're looking at the poll within the margin of victory up to, don't look at the polls, talk to voters. So join a phone bank now, please. Join a phone bank so we could talk to the voters that are still trying to figure it out. You've already sent over 1.5 million texts and engaged nearly 100,000 voters. Let's aim to hit 3 million texts and engage another 100,000 voters in the next 2 weeks. Do you think you could do that? Do you think you have enough in you, enough time, enough testimony, enough heart to engage 100,000 more voters and text 3 million voters together? Texting helps us reach voters multiple times and solidify their plans to vote early or on election day. It's a critical tool. So join a text bank. Join a text bank, join a phone bank. That is amazing. Y'all are amazing. We are building it. This is an action call. This is an organizing call. So this is time to take action and to pledge to take action. So let's take a quick moment now to hear from someone who deployed with Seed the Vote to knock doors. Tracy Zhu, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Zhu, and I'm a volunteer with Seed the Vote. I was born and raised in San Francisco and currently live in Oakland. I just got back from a weekend of door knocking in Phoenix where it was 108 degrees. Why did I fly to another state to canvass? Well, in 2016 and 2020, I did my duty of voting in the election. And as someone in a blue state, I didn't feel like there was much I could do to influence the presidential and congressional elections. For this election, I didn't want to have any regrets about doing enough to prevent Trump from being elected and to get a president who will fight for the working class. So I did a call out to my friends to see who would want to fly with me to a swing state to canvass. Guess who responded? My friends were moms and had multiple young children at home because they knew what was at stake in this election. They took precious time away from their small children to door knock in 100-degree heat. Why should you go canvassing or ask your friends to go canvassing? Many of us have already been donating, writing postcards, doing phone banking. You might think to yourself, I've never canvassed before. Well, these moms, my friends, who I went with, also didn't have any canvassing experience. Even for me, my last time canvassing was over 8 years ago. But all we needed to be successful was to have empathy and listening skills to talk to voters about what they cared about. We did training before we got to Phoenix, training on the ground while we were there, and got together to debrief afterwards. Seed the Vote made the logistics easy with support on flights and hotels, and for anyone who needed financial support, they made sure no one had financial barriers to go. I want to tell you about one voter. We were about to leave our first neighborhood, tired and exhausted from walking in the sun. One of our pod members pointed out that we had one more house at a dead-end street in the neighborhood, and they only spoke Spanish. My canvas partner who spoke Spanish knocked on the door and talked for 10 minutes to this voter who didn't even know who was running for president. By the end of the conversation, he turned from a non-voter to a likely voter who has a voting plan and was ready to vote down ballot. This is a voter who wouldn't have been reached by the phone, by text, or was even paying attention to the election at all. If we hadn't knocked on his door, he wouldn't have voted. Seed the Vote and all of our movement partners like Working Families Party are about community. It's about looking out for each other. We will be connected before and after the election. Getting on the doors is a great way to humanize people and to be humanized in the process. I'm so inspired that I'm going again to Phoenix again this weekend. I invite you to join Seed the Vote to canvass, and I invite you to invite a couple of friends with you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Tracy. Everybody give Tracy some energy. Give it up for Tracy. This is what we're talking about, right? Putting in that work, having those conversations, right? This is how we movement build. It's not simply by being spectators in political sport, right? It's about being agents of political change, like you, like me, like Tracy. Look, there's a whole lot of noise right now. I hear it all the time. Some pundits are out here saying Michigan is lost. Black men are lost. Immigrants, listen, they said similar things in 2018, in 2020, and again in 2022. And they were wrong then, and they are wrong now. Let them keep running their mouths. You stay disciplined. You stay organized. You stay in the game like Tracy and other folks around the country that are putting in the work to have those conversations with voters all around the country still making up their minds. We don't organize to follow the narrative. We organize to change it. For this entire year, we have been talking about the dual mandate to block Trump and build for working people. You heard on this call tonight that we are contesting the right wing for the vote of Black men, for example. Not just in this election, but we're building a party that earns their respect and their vote. You have heard that we're building in Georgia, that we're building in North Carolina, that we're building in Wisconsin in order to block Trump, but also to organize, to move the Democratic Party closer to the people, to move our politics closer to the people, and to build the Working Families Party as a vehicle for the multiracial working class. And I'm deeply proud and inspired by the ways we're holding together right now, refusing to fracture, staying focused, not getting caught up in the noise, and doing the damn work. So if you're down to do the damn work in the last 19 days, I need to see you in the chat. I need to hear you. I need to feel you. And more important, I need you to make a pledge. So how can you take action? If you haven't already, I'm asking you to join the Working Families Party. If you're already a member, consider becoming a dues-paying member. WFP is not one organization. It is a party built of grassroots organizations and activists like you, all aligned around the knowledge that the two-party system is not working for working people, and we must strategically build a party from the ground up that can ensure working people thrive and not just survive. If that is what you know, what you believe in your heart, then welcome. You are part of the Working Families Party. All you have to do is make it official by joining us today. You could join us right now by going to wfpus.org/member. Next, we need everyone to deploy to a swing state if you don't live in one. In-person interactions are going to be the most effective. So if you can figure out how to get yourself off work, please do so. See, the vote is still taking signups for Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Michigan. If you're watching this online, you can text mass call to 30403. That is mass call to 30403 to get all these links. We'll also drop links in the chat. Next, if you can't deploy in person, sign up for a phone bank. Surge, WFP, Carolina Federation, all have signups available. So Carolina Federation, Surge, and WFP all have signups for phone banks. Also, you could build a wolf pack. And if you can, build a wolf pack with your friends, family, and coworkers, and do more work together. I believe in us. I believe in you. And I can't wait to see you on the ground. So let's get it.
Y'all heard our party leader. Can we give it up for Maurice Mitchell one time? Give it up. I see Emma has said, yes, I am signed up for phone banking with WFP. Dolores, I see you making plans to go to Wisconsin. If you've made a commitment, if you've taken up a call to action, can you drop in the chat what you're up to so we can shout you out? We want to make sure that we're celebrating the folks that are actually getting this work done. We see you and we love you. Thank you so much. You got a bunch of Howard folks in the chat too, brother. They love you. All right. So y'all, we are over time and we want to be intentional about respecting you. This has been such an incredibly powerful evening. I want to thank every single one of our speakers, to Sindolo, to John, to Jay Knox, to Mo, to Tracy. Tracy, you got so much love in the chat. We're so grateful for each and every one of you and for the incredible life and democracy saving work that you're doing on the ground. And to each and every one of you that didn't regard it robbery to also come and spend the evening with us. Thank you for being here, and thank you for taking up the work of these calls to actions with showing up for racial justice, doing their phone banks, or going out on a deployment with Seed the Vote, or sending out postcards or text banking or phone banking with WFP. Remember, we are in the thick of the fight right now, and the feelings that you're feeling are totally natural. Whether it's about the election, whether it's about what you're seeing that's happening internationally, whatever it is, I hope that if nothing else, being on this call reminded you that you aren't alone. And as we leave this call today, let's remember that we need to hold multiple things at the same time. We are in a sprint to November 5th, and we are on a long haul march to build power over the next 5, 10, 15, 25 years. We are in a generational struggle. We are responsible for a generational struggle as much as we are in a rapid fire get out the vote drive. We're about building power. This is the double tempo we have to play and the power that we have to build. We're up against some powerful adversaries. My people would say principalities, against powers, against spiritual wickedness in high places. But this is not the first time that we or our ancestors have fought this kind of fight, friends. As we leave this call, we are more clear on the nature of what it is we have to block and the kind of power that we are committed to building. Remember, on our next mass call on October 30th at 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to come back together. And also mark your calendars for November 7th at 8 p.m. Eastern for our post-election mass call. It is such an honor and a privilege to be with all of you in this struggle. Let's go win this thing. See you soon. Have a great night.